At this point, I think it might be fair to say Hoyoverse has a knack for giving us free characters that are greatly misunderstood on launch. Harumasa, a character that most players have been labeling as weak, trash, or otherwise not worth building, is surprisingly one of the most detailed DPS in the game. He's got flair, style, and damage, but most importantly, he gets the girl. Harumasa is low-key one of the strongest burst DPS in the game, but that completely depends on your execution and your ability to play the game above average mean. I know you can do it though. That's why in this video I'll show you everything you need to know to get Harumasa started with his best builds for the burst DPS role he belongs in, which team formations gave me the smoothest results, and how to pull out the most of his damage through these electro quiver things. Can I give you guys a quick and honest disclaimer before we start? Harumasa might be the hardest character in the game to play. Piggybacking off what I said earlier, Harumasa isn't easy to play. He has a lot of text in his kit, but honestly, most of this stuff doesn't matter because the only two things you really care about are how to put electro quivers on the ground and his dash attack. But then you'd most likely have read this part. That's interesting, right? Because it alludes to you needing to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before you get a quiver on the ground, but this is the weakest of his quiver summoning attacks for now. At a base level, basic 5 only gives you 2 quivers, which is whack compared to what you've seen me showcase in my videos so far. We want 6 quivers all the time. Let me explain why his normals suck, then get into how to always have 6 quivers on the field to get the maximum damage. Any Harumasa doing all of this is wasting their damage and time. These suck. I don't know why they made them, and I truly hope someone comes up with some fire purpose for them that I'm just not seeing, but as of right now, you shouldn't bother doing any of this with Harumasa. The damage is low, it's time consuming, and you need to do the full combo 3 times before having 6 quivers laid down. Imagine doing this during your stun window. No wonder theory crafters are saying he sucks. Let's talk about his options. EX skill. This is your go-to move to lay down quivers instantly, but you shouldn't be using this to start the combo. It's more like a combo extender. There's also 2 versions of this, but you almost always want to use the second version. Both of them plant 6 quivers, but version 2 of this move is what happens when you hold the EX skill. Instead of just planting bombs, Harumasa will actually shoot a falling feather at the enemy and automatically mark the X on them. This then allows you to instantly dash attack from half screen and get the party started. Get used to abusing this mid combo all the time. Popping an anomaly is the second way to set quivers on the ground, and this is the one that should happen the most often. It's the best way for you to play towards the future regarding Harumasa, and depending on the team will be the easiest or hardest to achieve. What I mean by that is some characters play nicer with others like Miyabi and Yanagi for instance, but then adding Harumasa to this team makes your rotations all over the place because when Yanagi wants to be on the field, so does Harumasa. On the contrary, Bernice and Lighter work amazing for building up burn, but then Harumasa is lacking and will rarely trigger shock to pop disorders, which is huge for the team's extra damage. So you have to find a good balance, which is why I personally prefer Qingyi and Harumasa because she builds the anomaly perfectly where he lacks. Chain attack is the next option after that, and typically your strongest combo starter. This can get a little tricky though. On average, what should happen is you'll trigger an anomaly on the chain attack or before, which means you either take the immediate damage option or you cancel the first chain. It's not every time, but once you get your preferred rotations down, you'll see what I'm talking about. Similar to the EX skill, the chain attack also has an attack buffer option where if you hold EX attack during a chain attack, he'll shoot a falling feather into the enemy that'll allow you to immediately dash attack into them. Little bit of an extra to this, remember the 5th basic attack from earlier and how I said it only gave you 2 quivers, so it wasn't really worth using. This is where the chain attack comes into play. After using chain attack, your next 5th basic will slap down 6 full quivers instead of 2, which means instead of doing chain attack then loading a charge shot, you instead want to do a chain attack and immediate dash attack combo into the 5th basic hit like this. Notice how I skipped all the normal attacks to get straight into BA5? Thank you, enhanced dash attack combos. Then there's what happens in the event you didn't play for the future. Harumasa has a few input buffers in his kit that basically allow you to skip attack animations and get right into his Fallen Feather charge shot. So from a chain attack, you have 2 buffer options, either EX skill straight into dash attacks or hold basic attack to mark the X on the enemy before the dash attack. So now I've shown you guys all 4 ways to pressure the enemy with max quivers with moves that take less than 2 seconds. You see where I'm going with this? That's your combo goal with this character. I don't really know how many layers of the onion that is, but there's still another layer, or probably more. Like, listen, trust me, everything flows and it just takes you some practice. I promise you're gonna be knocking enemies' ankles loose with this Harumasa soon. If we combine everything I've taught you so far and string it together, you'll start getting rotations similar to this. What we want to focus on after learning all of that is when to do it and how to maximize it for whichever team we decide to play. In the case of Miyabi, Bernice, or any fast anomaly building character, my goal is to essentially steal turns with Harumasa by sneaking him onto the field in the middle of their longer animations for quick dash attacks and then leave. So now we can do combos like this. How we string these combos together depends on multiple factors like stun speed, damage windows, teammates, gear sets, and so on. There isn't a static, this is the only rotation to do, so you must do it. But there are optimal routes, and I've shown you some of the ones I found to be the strongest. Just remember to have fun at the end of the day. So like, you want to talk about his gear next? Gear on Harumasa is surprisingly vast enough that I needed to dig into options that are optimal versus good on paper. Since we've already established that Harumasa is a burst and not a main DPS that should be spamming basic attacks on the field, we can start to reasonably pick out 4-piece sets with a purpose. 4-piece Hormone Punk is my go-to set because of the 25% combat attack increase for 10 seconds. This is going to be perfect for most of our rotations because it allows us to time it with a stun window and dish out max damage immediately. There's no setup that needs to happen besides switch in, do damage. With this 4-piece, I'm actually running an Anomaly Mastery on Dis 6, attack percent on 5, and attack percent on 4. The reason for this is because with his signature W engine, I'm gaining an extra 10% on crit rate on top of the 50% I already have after we trigger a stun or anomaly. His dash attacks hold a natural 25% crit rate attached to each one, giving me roughly 85 to 100% crit rate depending on my subs. I'm also getting a 50% electric damage bonus from the weapon and a 2-piece thunder respectively, allowing me to push his attack even higher. Finally, we talk about the AM Dis 6, which a lot of you guys had some issues with, or rather some questions about from the Miyabi guide. Without AM6, Harumasa struggles to pop an electric disorder with the teams I was using, like Miyabi's, and I'm already at 3500 attack before combat with this build anyway. AM was the appropriate choice here to help him more strongly benefit the team. Running an attack percent was pretty much overkill, and to be fair, he didn't really need it. 4-piece Woodpecker is after that, again, due to us having understood the method behind his combos earlier. In one combo, we can trigger all 3 attack buffs in seconds, but if we play for the future, we can preload 2 or 3 buffs before the chain attack starter for an immediate max damage combo starter. Then we can refresh them during the rotation. So even though we get more combat attack than Hormone Punk, remember that everything about Woodpecker is conditional except the 8% crit rate. Hormone Punk isn't. Now, if I wasn't using his signature, then I'd be shooting for an electric damage disc on 5 and crit rate on 4, but the 6 disc is completely dependent on what team I play. If I need help popping disorders, I'll give him an Anomaly Dis 6, but if I'm playing something where I don't care about him popping disorder, then I'll be pushing for an attack percent. Finally, a 4-piece Thunder Metal is our final option that's going to give the most combat attack buff, coming in at 28%, but it has the hardest condition to fulfill, given the fact it's completely dependent on your team. Playing Harumasa more optimal than Lord Sephiroth himself couldn't activate this 4-piece faster than you can hit the subscribe button. The only way this happens is if you run a stunner like Qingyi or stack up a fully electric team with Anbi and Rina. This set's problem quickly shows up once you realize everyone on the team is fighting for time. Anbi needs to stun fast, but Rina needs to help build Anomaly quickly while also taking into account anything else happening on the field. The quick assist from Rina would lead into Harumasa with no quivers on the field, making him the most dead weight to the team in that moment. And we'd somehow have to time everything to line up perfectly in place that shock triggers for Harumasa before his chain attack so he can have the max damage starter available to him at all times. And honestly, it's not like the method is impossible. I'm sure we can do it if we practice it, but this has to be the most tedious condition to fulfill for 1% more combat attack than Woodpecker and 3% more than Hormone Punk, where the only condition that one has is to switch on the field. With any of these sets, you can mix up whatever 2 pieces you want. Branch and Blade, Astral Voice, Hormone, Puffer, Thunder, doesn't matter. Grab the ones with the best substats that fit your needs and go to town. Your most important factor is just learning Harumasa's optimal combo routes. His weapons will go from Zanshin Herb Case, the Brimstone, and the new Marcato Desire in order of best to third best. Zanshin is of course designed for him. There's really no explanation needed there. Brimstone is similar to Woodpecker, where the conditions it asks for are basically free if you learn even one of Harumasa's optimal combos, and Marcato is currently free from the event and is the only engine that gives both crit rate and combat attack percent with easy condition. So you don't necessarily need his SIG, but per usual, if you don't have it, then you just have to work harder to build out his kit for the desired damage performance. You guys know the drill. We can talk about Mindscapes. You don't need these, especially because Harumasa's free, but if you happen to get them, hey, let me borrow your account. Harumasa's M1 makes it so that you gain 14 stacks instead of his normal rate, meaning you can dash attack 6 times in a row instead of 3, like before, without needing to reapply Electro Prison. This makes it easier to consistently net max stacks from his core passive. M2 allows you to increase his dash attack damage by 50% thanks to a new buff called Electro Blitz. This, paired with M1, helps you achieve even more damage outside of the stun window he typically resides in. At this current moment in time, I don't have any footage of these Mindscapes due to the fact that M2 has some flaws in it currently that have not been fully tested out yet, and the dev team is currently working on that, but they may or may have not made it into live server. I genuinely don't know. The last of this guide will focus briefly on his team play. Due to him being a character that excels at burst combos, it's less about showing you every single team option in the game and more about explaining what these teams do for Harumasa and what he does for them. Just like the Miyabi guide, I'll separate these into best in slot, most effective, and hyper carry. Today we'll start with best in slot, but for the record, Ching-Yi is his best stun partner by a long shot. You see the pun that I did there? Miyabi, Ching-Yi, and Harumasa is his best in slot and most effective teams. 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. Everyone on this team performs at their highest caliber together and helps one another achieve an even higher skill ceiling. I've already explained this team in my Miyabi guide, but I'll still give the gist of the formula here. This is essentially a double burst comp. Miyabi takes the lead on this team in order to set herself up with a single EX skill, so she has 3 stacks under her belt before Ching-Yi takes over. Ching-Yi then stuns anything in the game within literal seconds, helps build Electric Anomaly extremely well thanks to her flurry of attacks, has the highest stun damage multiplier in the game, which pairs too well with the freeze, and the new decibel rating change is crazy beneficial specifically to her. After the stun, Harumasa and Miyabi get to share dishing out massive damage together. Miyabi will be the one that needs to start the chain attack, not Ching-Yi. This setup is more detailed than most comps because Miyabi needs to adapt to the situation. As I mentioned before, the team rotation itself isn't 100% static, but it's consistent enough that you can practice it and adjust to your needs. The timing on when you proc the disorder is insanely important, and you need to get rid of Frostburn with another disorder so Miyabi can build Frost Anomaly very easily. Otherwise, the build-up rate is halved and it's practically as bad as Harumasa's. This is the reason for having Ching-Yi and Harumasa on the team, and you're also going to be running Ching-Yi with an Anomaly Mastery disc, not anything else. I know she's a stun character and you're going to hear someone say impact, but your goal is team play. Your goal is not solo play. Speaking on Harumasa, my boy is a high execution equals high reward type of character, and on this team, the reward is insane. Using the optimal combos and your own badass skills, you'll see that you can shred through enemies' HP like butter. To do that though, you need to take advantage of his attack buffer windows to make your combos seamless and optimal. With the combination of fast dash attacks, set play for the future to work with Miyabi's insanely fast freezes, and the help of Ching-Yi's stun multiplier, plus anomaly buildup. This is why I said Harumasa truly establishes himself as Miyabi's best offensive partner with this team. Everything that I just told you explains why this team is the best in slot for not only Miyabi, but Harumasa as well. And it's the most effective for Harumasa because everyone on the team is doing exactly what he wants and he's doing exactly what the team wants. Harumasa, Lighter, and Bernice doesn't technically fall under either of these categories I have, but it's something I wanted to test because Lighter gives a 3-second extension to the stun timer, and that can be huge for helping you clear a full combo. Meanwhile, he helps build stun incredibly fast through the use of his ora punches and EX skill. He's also buffing Bernice's off-field damage for the team, but unfortunately not giving the same benefactor to Harumasa. Then speaking of Bernice, she's an excellent unit that can build Anomaly for Harumasa quickly, essentially does damage at the same time he does, and has an easier time rotating with lighter before the stun, so you have an easier outlook on when to bring Haru in for quiver setups. Unfortunately, this team starts to fall apart once you get more optimal at their game. One helps the other, but not another kind of situation. And with Harumasa being the main damage dealer on this team, which isn't his primary role, it becomes more of a nuisance than it is fun. Currently, I'm testing Coleta, but it's nothing set in stone just yet, and I'll update you guys when I finish it. Harumasa, Anbi, and Rina is the final team I want to talk about in today's video, and just to make this clear, I really don't like mono anything in this game. Not because it's bad, but because you're always missing out on one of the game's most underrated mechanics, disorder. Think of this team as a free-to-play mono-electric hyper carry, which is pushing the threat that something is always being shot. This, unfortunately, is where the problem comes into play for this specific team. Rina's anomaly buildup is just okay, and even if I include the new decibel rating change, it's still expensive. So not only does the average player need to focus on consistently building up electric anomaly in order to help Harumasa put max quivers on the field, but they also need to worry about Rina's puppet timing. After that, we get an Anbi, who dishes out some decent stun meter, but lacks in the damage department to offset whatever is going on when Harumasa isn't on the field. So similar to the previous team, you're just lacking consistent damage and faster stuns. Of course, Qingyi would immediately improve this, or any of his teams tenfold, but that's kind of the inherent issue with Harumasa's team building overall. At this current moment in time, Harumasa's big flaw is whether or not any given player has two criteria checked off. Number one, Qingyi, or an incredibly fast stunner. Number two, their willingness to learn more about playing Harumasa beyond the average mean. While yes, he's free and incredibly strong, that's only if you learn how to play him. He's also a burst DPS and not meant to be the only damage dealer on the team. I myself have started testing other teammates like Coleta, Lycan, Caesar, and even Ben. It doesn't really matter who's on the team if he doesn't have help, or he's helping someone else. You can make it work, and he does do more damage than most DPS characters in his bracket, but why would anyone want to make a technical character harder to play? The players that benefit most from Harumasa are those willing to push themselves to the next level of playing Zenless Zone Zero. Would I still recommend investing into him despite that? Hell yeah. These agents are only getting better, stronger, and more fun the higher we understand the game. Asaba Harumasa gets a straight shot of 3 out of 5.